So that's a lot of information to take in for viewers. I think the important thing to note is we're in that top 16 of the open bracket stage. So a lot of games ahead of us, which means we get to find out a lot about the teams here. We get a lot of view into the meta and just a lot of exciting things. Stuart, I'm going to go right to you to start off. I know you're talking about Viv Esports. Any other teams you got your eyes on in this bracket?
I think the top four that we all know and love, Game Lord, Team Queso, Rixel, GG and Na'Vi, they're all the teams that we know already. We know some of the players already, but again, as I mentioned before, Viv Esports, KTIL, all these rosters that maybe we don't really know too much about, and the viewers won't know too much about as well. They're the kind of the underdogs of this tournament. Hopefully we can get a few surprises as well. I think that's the most exciting part about this tournament.
Absolutely. I love the fact that it's open bracket. It means we get a lot of players that we haven't seen before. It's also double elimination, so it means that it's not necessarily like you lose once and you're out. There is going to be more time to play out for our teams. So as we go through the bracket, we'll walk you through all of the games. And today's games, I think we've got some great ones this weekend. Hell's, we know Team Queso, we know Game Lord, they're all both playing tomorrow. Today's games, which teams are you looking at?
For today's games, we have two Spanish teams colliding with each other, but I am especially looking for Viv Esports. That's the game that's coming afterwards. That's the dark horse, as Stuart mentioned, and I agree with that. They have some amazing players, and I'm just really looking forward to see what they're going to do in the second game.
Yeah, I am too. And, it wouldn't be a season without some predictions from all of our analysts and casters and the entire group. So we're kind of putting our names on things. I'm going for the dark horse today in our first series of the game of the day with WYGers. I've been watching a few of their VODs. I think if they can get past the early game, maybe they can do it. But, I'm not the analyst on this broadcast, so maybe I'm completely wrong. You two are both in complete sync on the rest of your predictions. Stuart, come on, you've got to throw something in the mix, right?
I think Game Lord and Team Queso tomorrow. I think everyone can agree that they're both heavy favourites. I think the close game is going to be our first game of the day. WYGers against Zero Zone, both Spanish org. Both the teams are going to be very familiar with each other, and it's going to be an exciting first game to start off the playoffs.
It absolutely will be. It's not just our opinions that we want to hear from. We always want to hear from you and the community as a whole. Although when we look at our social media of the day, you can hear from our players. The tweets over on WRE_EMEA put out some content a little earlier on with some players from the playoffs and their thoughts on how they got here. You can also hear more of our opinions if you'd like. Stuart's YouTube channel has his full tier list alongside Xscandal joined for that broadcast, and then Mozilla, one of the players, doing his own. Very not biased at all. Hells, we've seen a lot of tier lists. I know, I don't think you've done one yet, Hells. What's your opinion on all the tier lists we've seen so far? Are you on board with this method of tier lists?
Yeah, it feels like this is more of an emotional tier list than an actual tier list, because we haven't seen much from the teams yet. And obviously, from Mozilla, for example, he put all of Rix's rosters on top. We're just gonna have to see how they perform, right? It's really funny to see what people think of these players, and it's especially interesting to see there is a lot of these underrated teams like Control, and we don't see people thinking that these players are good. We're seeing a lot of these players on the bottom of these tier lists, and I feel like there's going to be a surprise from some of these teams coming.
Yeah, I think that we very well could be in for a bunch of surprises. Stuart, I know that you've got to prepare for the rest of the show, so we're going to let you head off as Hells and I take a few steps further through the broadcast and get closer to our first series of the day. So thank you very much for joining us. We'll catch you a little bit later.
See you soon.
Nevertheless, Hells, we've been waiting for this moment. I know Patterson, he put the Dragon Ball thing on social media. I'm not a Dragon Ball fan. That's my shame that I have to show it to everybody. But it feels like we've all been charging for months for this. Ever since Horizon Cup finished, I feel like we're all just been waiting on the edge of our seats for Wild Rift Esports. So let's take a look at some of the most important stories coming into day one. I think the new patch, people have seen a couple of changes. Ezreal a little bit in solo queue. Hells, anything from Ezreal in these changes we're expecting on today's patch?
Ezreal in solo queue it is. And the thing is, the Ezreal buff is not going to do anything in competitive. We're probably going to be seeing a lot of these mages, like the Morgana, being played in the Dragon lane to be able to push out those waves constantly and being able to roam around all the time. That's a thing that Ezreal unfortunately cannot do. So even though he's quite strong and very strong in solo queue, we're probably not going to be seeing much from him in these games, in the competitive games.
I think that's really fair. We also talk a lot about bruises in the top lane, those of us that have kind of watched scrims in some of the games so far. We've seen a lot of Mundo, but I think one champion being available, Set. Everybody's wondering, 100% pick or ban, yes or no? Where's your money on, Hells?
100%. Definitely 100%. I mean, if he's not banned already, he's definitely gonna get picked. But what I'm more interested in, instead of him being picked or banned, is how people are gonna counter him. Because that's a thing that's, not being addressed too often. And these teams, I really hope, are gonna show us how to destroy a set, right? Like, give the enemy a set and counter pick it.
Yeah, it's one of those things where if you don't destroy the set, though, he's definitely going to destroy your carries. Like the number of clips where you've seen set just pick up a tank, throw him into the backline, and basically obliterate people. Somebody I know who's actually had that in their solo queue games. I've seen it on his stream. I've seen the clips. As is Stuart, who I think we can take a look at some of our key points for the game before we head into things. Let's take a look at the rosters. We'll look at exactly who our players to watch are in this game. So it is gonna be on the blue side, by the looks of it, for game number 1. It is WYG, it is Extreme, Fowlen, Michele, Zero and Round, and Zero Zone on the red side. Patterson, Lubunya, Sephiro, R Nation, and Fran. Any players to watch for you, Hells?
Personally, not really. These seem like two very underrated teams that we just don't know too much about. We're gonna have a player to watch after this game, right? Like after this game is over, we're gonna see who are gonna be the players to watch for the next series.
Yeah, and there are some players on other teams that we know who to expect a lot from when it's their star mid laners, that kind of thing. And I know that a lot of people know teams like Team Queso and Team WREC. This is the beauty of an open bracket. We get to come into a matchup with kind of fresh eyes on the meta, fresh eyes on the lineups as well. There's only been a handful of games to actually see, and that's if they were streamed from the original rounds of the open bracket. Time to hear a little bit about what Stuart thinks about today's games. Stuart, what are the key points of today?
Thank you very much, Stress. These are the key points for today's game between WYG and Zero Zone. Obviously, it's a battle of the Spanish organizations. We know that there's a huge Spanish community in Wild Rift, and there's loads of fans as well. And these two teams might be very, very familiar with each other. And Fowlen, the jungler of WYG, was actually on Zero Zone before, so he's quite familiar with some of the players like R Nation, Sephiro and Patterson as well, which will be very, very interesting to see. And then we've got all eyes on the AP mages. As Hell said already, the AP mages are really, really strong at the moment in the duo lane. And we've seen R Nation and Zero both play mages in the duo lane. So that's something to keep an eye on during the draft phase. And then the last one is about the top laners. The top lane carries, both Extreme and Patterson love champions like Camille, which I think will be a top priority during the draft. You've even seen them play like Kali, Darius, Renekton as well. So that's going to be my key points for today's game. Back to Stress and Hells to get us very, very close to game number 1.
We're so ready. We're so ready to get into game. I can't wait. Always this time before our first draft, I think we have to set a few ground rules before picks and bans for day number 1. Yuumi is not available. She's not available. She only came out like 12 hours ago. No real way that she's actually going to get played. It's going to be a couple of weeks before we actually see Yuumi. After that, we've got to look at these red side bans that everybody is going to ban every single game. So we've talked about the set. I think Jace has to be one of those bans that people are going to look at. And then we look to the likes of Varus, the Camille's, those types of picks that can be ultra strong if they're let through the draft. So we are headed into the draft between our teams for game number 1 of the day. Any other picks we need to keep our eyes on?
You've already mentioned the Jace. Camille definitely. In these competitive games, Camille and champions like Galio, that combination is devastating in these competitive games because there is really no counterplay to it. You cannot just get out of the Camille ultimate. So that's a thing that we're definitely going to be seeing heavy focus on in these drafts. And the bruisers in the Baron lane, the Darius, the Renektons, and that kind of stuff. And the AP mages, of course. So that's the conventional draft. And we can see the draft has already started. So now it's just, is Seth gonna get banned? Again, I really hope he's not, but I do expect him to get banned, Stress.
I feel like he will. So to run you through, those of you familiar with PC League of Legends, this is exactly the same draft phase as you would expect on PC. Those of you familiar with Wild Rift know exactly what we're doing here. It's going to be blue side picking first and banning first. Red side will have the counter pick as always. But red side always have their picks that they have to take away, and the ban phase set currently is going to be one of them. It's Olaf taken away from the jungle pool on the side of WYG. So Olaf is one of those picks that can run away with it. Morgana banned as well. Kind of tells you not looking at first pick Morgana on blue side for WYG.
Yeah, not looking for Morgana first. If Morgana got buffed, especially in the jungle, like that might be the weird pick that you might see, but does incredibly well because Morgana's ultimate especially is incredibly powerful in the late game, and it seems like Wygers just don't want to deal with it. Rakan is another one of those champions that like there is just some support players that are incredibly good on the Rakan. You just don't really want to deal with them. And then we have a Diana ban, you know, incredibly good. And if I see a Diana ban, I don't know why, but I feel like there's gonna be an Orianna coming. Camille first pick. You know, obvious. This is the obvious draft. Camille first pick. The Galio is open. So Zero Zone definitely has to play around the idea that it's very likely going to be a Camille Galio stress.
Yeah, that's a really strong combination. Fiora is going to get picked up here. This leaves us with a couple of options that I know you want to touch on a little bit. So we always talk about Renekton. You mentioned the Orianna. Now Varus is available for once, and a really strong jungler that's up his Lee Sin, and it has been locked in. So this is a really strong top side with Fiora Lee.
Yeah, definitely a very strong top side. Fiora is a great pick into Camille. You know, she can stop that ultimate with her right post. And there it is, the Galio Camille. You know, this is the obvious, the Galio Camille combination, and they've combined it with the Corki as well. And Corki with his package. Now, can you imagine what kind of an engage Wygers has with that composition stress?
That's pretty broken. And of course, Corki, haven't seen it in a while, but can be played in mid lane. Braum banned for disengage. This is kind of like trying to disengage when you've got a Camille and a Galio coming at you. That's not a lot to actually make it work. But if there's one champion that does have that big disengage ultimate, it's going to be Braum. Varus taken away to remove some of that bot lane presence. Fizz taken away to remove an assassin from that mid lane that likes to push and roam. So that would have been quite a tough pack to deal with.
Yeah, I'm not quite... Yeah, okay, Fizz, Zero Zone banned Fizz. It makes sense. They don't want to be dealing with that annoying assassin. We see the Ziggs ban as well, because Ziggs can actually jump away. Thing is, though, the draft from Wygers is incredibly good right now, because if you look at that composition, there it is, Orianna. I told you, like, they banned away the Diana. That's kind of shows that they want to pick the Orianna. Because really, the only champion that can deal with Orianna in Wild Rift right now is the Diana. So they banned it away and they picked the Orianna. This is quite an obvious draft. We do expect it. But now what? We see a Garen and a Graves?
and here's the flexible potential of Red Side is you can put that Ori in the bottom lane if you want to. Wild Rift, mages in the bottom lane a lot. We've talked about it. Yeah, this Graves and Garen composition feels like they were kind of going towards this team fight and then took a wild swing a different way, where it's like you don't really have setup outside of Camille now, right?
Yeah, it's a bit of a dangerous composition. They have a really good engage with the Galio and the Camille, but it feels like they might perhaps be lacking some sort of a ranged damage, because sure they have the Corki, but even Corki doesn't have that much range. And if you play that against an Orianna who does have the major range, you know, it might be a little dangerous. They really have to all in with this composition. You know, the composition that Wygers is running, they have to all in. One-shot the Orianna and get away with it. Because if they don't one-shot her, Orianna with the slows, with the shields, with the ultimate, it's going to be really hard for Wygers to get to her.
I think that's really fair. Like you're talking about the kind of like the arms reach, the length that they can keep them away for Zero Zone. Like Ahri as well. Hard to run into Ahri. Like that charm comes out and you kind of get burned down. I'm excited to see how it goes. This is not the draft I was expecting for game one overall. Like there are a few picks that were lacking until the second phase. So really exciting to see how the meta is going to play out. For me, watching the Wygers games, I feel like their early game is the least solid part. So running this composition that relies on them getting through the early game and getting to team fights could very well backfire a little bit. So I mean, this is it. This is the moment we've all been waiting for. We're about to go on to the Rift for game number one between these two teams. Any predictions coming out of this draft?
Oh yeah, I predict that Zero Zone is going to win this. They just have the better composition, but Wygers just has too much of a high-risk composition to make work, in my opinion. I mean, of course they can make it work, but if they don't make that initial engage work fully, like if they don't just one-shot an enemy, it's really not going to work for them. I don't see a way for them to win a late-game teamfight stress.
Well, we're going to have to keep track. It's always about the execution as we load onto Wild Rift. It is game number one of the Wild Rift EMEA Championship, Wygers versus Zero Zone. And Wygers going to 5-man stack, try and get Ward down for initial vision. Expect fast fights compared to PC League of Legends, those of you that are new. This is a push into mid lane just to try and get a little bit of presence in a matchup where Garen's going to get harassed down quite a lot. This is something we see quite a lot, right?
Yeah, this is something we've seen quite a lot, trying to push out some waves. Now, especially against a champion like Ahri, you know, Ahri can push out waves incredibly fast. So pushing out that initial wave is a good idea to just not have to deal with it. And a funny thing is, it's a Garen mid lane. What is a Garen doing in mid lane?
Yeah, we didn't actually take note of that coming out of the draft. I think like we were so focused on some of the Camille Galio synergy that I was like didn't do lane assignments from it. This is something that's a lot less standard that we don't see. There have been a couple of external tournaments recently where we've had some of the meta play itself out. So kind of interesting to see how that plays out. But both teams are going to kind of feel each other out for the beginning of the game. The game is quite quick, so don't expect to have too much downtime between these two teams. But it is going to be first gank potential for Graves on this bottom side if he comes into lane, but really hard to gank the Orianna Braum. Like, they have so much zone control. They're going to try it. They're going to try and make it work. Flash forward into the bottom lane with Galio. Not quite enough. They will get a flash out from Orianna, though. Big summoner used.
Yeah, and our nation just flashes away. You know, he's like, I don't want to deal with it. But in the mid lane, if we look at Savira on the Ahri, he can just easily push out the Garen if he wants to. But we have a fight in the jungle.
Oh, fighting over first crab of the game on bottom. There's the charm, lands onto Graves. They're going to get damage down as the taunt does land on 3. Corki not quite into the fight yet. First blood goes over to Fran on Braum. A big first fight already early on in this game.
Yeah, big fight already early on. We see the Fiora and the Camille fighting. There's really not that much happening right there. The problem that I have with Weigers is that Michele is going to have a very hard time pushing out that mid. And as you can see, Ahri is rotating yet again while he has a wave under his turret.
Yeah, and Patterson's here as well, as is Lumunia on that Lee Sin. And Lee Sin is just like one of these super active early game junglers who will just try and fight you over everything. And you can see he'd already got a bit of a gold lead to start this game off.
Yeah, definitely got a bit of a gold lead, and we can clearly see that Weigers is struggling with this mid lane matchup. Ahri is just able to really do whatever she wants. Like right now, she's freezing the lane. If Garen steps up, if Michele steps up, she just goes on him. She deals damage and goes out. If she wants to push out the wave, boom, throw an orb and you push out the wave.
Yeah, this is a really interesting trend from the VODs that I watched of Weigers. Like, I mean, Garen's going to do a little bit better when he can go out into the solo lane once the neutral objectives spawn at 4 minutes, but like this early part of the game, you're right, like Ahri just gets to free push the lane and then go and be in fights. So if they can get a couple more kills like this game will snowball very quickly.
Yeah, this game will definitely snowball if they can, and they have the Lee Sin paired up to do that as well. I want to talk about the first dragon though, because Weigers has a Corki, and what happens is Corki gets the package for the first dragon. They have the insane engaged composition. You can see they all have their ultimates ready. You know, when Galio and Corki are gonna reach level 5, they should not use these ultimates for the dragon. That would be their moment to absolutely destroy Zero Zone. And what I would like to see from Zero Zone personally is if they just abandon the dragon and go for the Rift Herald or a turret, because I really feel like they cannot take that fight this early on with Weigers against that composition.
I think that's a really fair point, and something you always have to keep a track of is that package timing, especially from the Corki perspective, right? You need to be able to recall and get it before the fight. One thing that I do worry about a little bit for the Weigers comp is like, I don't know how good these very early fights are when they need items on the likes of like Camille and Corki to really have that damage output early. Whereas like Lee Sin just walks in, he's going to you do a ton of damage and kill your carry, right? Like it might be a misbalance, but like the gold is already racking up on the side of Zero Zone.
Yeah, and the problem indeed that Weigers has is having to do with that Lee Sin. Because sure, Camille can ult, sure, she can set up the ultimate for Galio, but what can Lee Sin do? He can kick away the Camille. And that's why Lee Sin is such an amazing pick, because he can, if he's quick with his reactions, he can just kick away the Camille, and he is going to kick her out of her ultimate, and then, of course, you know, you can just escape the Galio ultimate.
Yeah, and it looks like Zero Zone are going to do exactly what you were talking about. They heard the Corki package sound. They're going to handshake these objectives. That's kind of how we refer to it when, you know, red side take one, blue side take the other. These early ones, don't fight over if you don't need to. So it's going to be Rift Herald going over to Zero Zone, Ocean Drake going over to Weigers. So we're in this phase of the game now where a lot of the time the bot lane carries or the dragon lane carries will sit in the middle lane and just farm the wave and make sure that it never pushes their tower, and it allows the junglers to just go from lane to lane and get any work they can done through the jungle.
Yeah, and really, really well played by Zero Zone here. They identified the composition of Weigers. They understood, hey, we don't need to go for this dragon, even though it's actually probably one of the most important dragons, and we have a fight in the mid lane.
3 versus 2, Braum jumped forward, but I don't know that there's much to stand behind, as they are going to hold a lot of the ultimates. Real good patience there from Zero Zone not to just blow their ultimates right away.
Yeah, definitely. They knew, okay, we're alive anyway, so don't have to blow our ultimates. And yeah, they're just chilling, you know, getting to that late game. As you can see, Zero Zone, all of them have finished an item. And Weigers nearly finished the items. Camille's going back right now. You know, Extreme is going back to get that Trinity Course. We just have a little skirmish right there. Not much going to be happening because, yeah, it's a Garen. But they've swapped lanes. Interestingly, they've swapped lanes.
Yeah, there's a full swap here with those duo lanes heading towards mid. Now it's going to be a roam up towards the top side. Graves is going to get spotted out with the ball from Orianna, but they actually don't want to engage because that Galio ult can bring Galio into the fight and even the numbers up so quickly. So Zero Zone playing it patiently, but you know, this composition from Wygers has the ability to turn fights quite quickly.
Yeah, and the thing is, they both have solid late game compositions. But I would argue that Wygers has an even better late game composition because they have that insane engage. They have the Camille, who's an unbeatable late game champion. And I really feel like Zero Zone is trying to rely a little too much on the Orianna. Sure, they're gold ahead, but I don't know if you can do that, Stress.
Yeah, this is, believe it or not, is a bit of a slower game than we normally come to expect in Wild Rift. Like, normally you've had like 3 team fights by this point. So I think any composition that has like an Ahri and a Lee Sin would love to get those early kills. In goes Lee Sin to try and get one for himself, forces the flash out of Corki. We'll see if they can loop back on that, but this is a good opportunity for that Rift Herald.
Yeah, they dropped the Rift Herald, and we can see that Wygers is ready to defend. They're not going to get a turret out of it, very likely. As we can see, they go in for a fight.
Oh, they do land the taunt on 3 people. Shockwave doesn't really do too much. They're going to throw the Brawl ult onto it as well. I think this might be an overextension if they stick around because look, Garen is closing in, as is Camille, although Camille now caught out on the side by Patterson. That's the kill going on to Graves as Labunya picks up one on the Lee Sin, flashes himself away, and should be able to get back out of this fight now. Oh, Garen locked in position for a little while, will get taken down, and it's all Zero Zone so far.
Oh, all Zero Zone so far. They kind of wasted their ultimates in the beginning of that fight, but it ended up working really well for them. And I'm saying wasted, but they did get some of the members from Wygers at a very low amount of HP, which they were able to finish them off. And now they're getting a mid lane turret as well. This is massive for Zero Zone. This is the advantage that they needed. This is the gold lead that they needed. Actually, they don't get the turret. Huh.
Yeah, it stays at 200 health. It's difficult on that Orianna once the enemy team is back out, but they will push onto bot lane. They've got to be careful they don't overstay because look at that minimap. There's 4 members of Wygers heading bot lane. It's going to be 400 health on this turret as well. So 2 objectives they've not quite been able to secure. Neutral objectives coming up in about 40 seconds time. So they have to reset, get their items, get healthy, and get back out on the Rift.
All of Wygers towers have no HP. Like, take a look at the Baron lane, mid lane, bot lane tower. They all don't have HP. And this is free gold for them. They want to take those turrets as fast as possible because taking a turret, securing a turret gives a lot of gold and experience to you and your teammates. So Zero Zone should definitely be looking to get some of these turrets, especially when the new objectives are spawning. You know, the new dragon, the new Rift House. They can try to look for those turrets instead.
Yeah, and at this point, like, Corki's just recalled, well, was trying to get the package, did get his recall denied. That is actually a significant thing not to have for Corki, especially as Zero Zone are going to cut down into this dragon. Perfect timing on this if they actually started away. Corki does get the benefit of the extra movement speed, so he should be around for the beginning of the fight, but it's going to be the inverse objectives taken this time around. It'll be Wygers taking the Rift Herald, Zero Zone taking a Mountain Drake for themselves. That might help. There's, mixed damage on Wygers, but no real tanks on Zero Zones. They could use that tankiness.
Yeah, so interestingly, Wygers went for the Rift Herald. What I like to say is when you have a stronger composition than the enemy, you want to go for a fight. And I don't quite understand why Wygers went for the Rift Herald. They want to take a turret, of course, but they can fight. They have the Corki package, they have the Camille ult, they have the Galio ult. Why are they not fighting at the Mountain Dragon? They can just easily take it, fight, get some kills, take the Dragon, and take the Rift Herald Stress.
Yeah, it's a good question. I wonder how afraid they are of this Orianna, who she has 2 items done. She's not that far ahead, about 600, 700 gold over the most fed carry. So that is pretty strong, but we're not at that point of the game yet when Orianna can just like blow someone up immediately. So fair question to say, but like this gold lead has exploded over the last couple of minutes. So certainly Wygers feeling like Zero Zone are in full control, but without Wygers fighting, how can they ever get back in this game?
It's going to be really hard for them to get back into the game, except for the perfect engage like we talked about. But yes, as you said, Orianna doesn't have that damage yet, but very, very soon she will. She already has 2 items. She has the Rabadon's Death Cap, and very soon she's going to do insane damage to this composition of Wygers.
Yeah, Patterson's going to try and just get the tower from underneath Camille. Oh, Camille, you can only lock one of them down, and it's not going to be enough as the Sonic Wave does connect, allows Lee Sin to pick that up. Now Galio, a little bit stuck 1 versus 2. The rest of the team are trying to close in on mid lane. A lot of damage to be done to this Garen before you take him out, so this might be a bit of an overreach from the side of Zero Zone. Maybe they go for the Galio instead. Fiora going to try and get it, but Corki turning damage. That Charm, is it going to land? Will hit onto Corki under the turret, but can't quite put the damage down. Shockwave plus the Braum ultimate, but nothing is quite there to pick up the kill.
And we can see all over the board, Zero Zone is just dominating every single lane. And I want to talk about Severo and Patterson as well. They are both champions that have true damage, and they are going to be able to deal with the Garen. So even though Garen can tank up a lot of damage, these are champions that can deal with the Garen. And I'm sure Patterson and Severo know that they have to be the ones to focus down the Garen, because that true damage is going to absolutely shred through his HP.
Well, we've had all 3 of those outer towers taken in favor of Zero Zone, now up to just about a 7,000 gold lead. It's going to take a pretty important fight for WYG to come back into this, and this Camille just hasn't had the presence of a first pick that we would like to see from a Camille. Like, a lot of her strength comes from being able to pick off one target out on a side lane before a fight ever starts, and then coming into a fight and like getting that angle in. But when you're behind, it's so hard to do on Camille.
Yeah, definitely, it's really hard. We see all 5 of them here. They might try to dive, but yeah, they actually go for the Rift Herald push. And the thing is, right now, Zero Zone, every single one of their members have 2 items, except for the support. But they all have 2 full items. Yeah, Rift Herald doesn't even do anything. WYGers, on the other hand, none of them have 2 items yet. So this is a massive advantage for Zero Zone. They need to look for the fight now. Like, they need to be the aggressors right here now.
Yeah, and it's so hard when, like, one of your options is, okay, we drop the Rift Herald and we force somebody to get it, and if they're not all there, maybe we can take a fight. Well, all 5 members are there, the Rift Herald dies, doesn't even get a charge. So, really tough spot to be in. Braum is going to get silenced as he's in the brush. Hits the Krug, not really the target he was looking for on that Winter's Bite, but Zero Zone are going to back themselves away. Fiora on the side lane is so strong compared to Camille. This could end up being a bit of a split push game while the rest of the team disengage. This team setup does lend themselves towards like a 1-4 in PC terms, where like you disengage with the rest of the team while Fiora does work on the side.
Yeah, and I really like that Zero Zone is doing that, especially in this draft, because we know that WYGer's composition is supposed to have a 5-man fight, right? Camille engages, Galio follows up. If you don't have the Camille engage, it makes it infinitely weaker. So I really like the fact that Patterson on the Fiora has decided to split push instead.
Yeah, it really rips WYGers around the map. They're going to focus topside here. They're sacrificing the dragon to try and get the tower. There's no way they start Baron. Zero Zone is so close that this would be suicidal to do it. So they must just be looking for the top lane tower here. But look, Fiora's already there. Braum's already there. Orianna may be caught, though. There are 4 members here surrounded. Can they get a good disengage for a moment from Braum? And how did nobody die there? How did Orianna not get caught out? They still are under the tower, and here comes the rest of Zero Zone as it's the first kill nearly going over to Fiora. Will get the kill onto Corki. Manages to stasis to keep himself alive, and this has gone disastrously wrong for WYGers. It looked so good. It was a 5 versus 3, and it's all 5 members of WYGers dead as Zero Zone clean ace and take the Baron.
Oh my god, our nation with the stasis enchant coming in clutch. WYGers thought that they had a free kill right there. As you saw, they all flashed on the Orianna. They all flashed on our nation. Our nation was like, nah, I'm just gonna stasis enchant. My whole team is behind me. He flashes away, and as we can see in this replay, he's in the stasis enchant right there. Flashes away from it, under their turret, and now they cannot do anything anymore. WYGers has no opportunity to get any kills under the turret of Zero Zone, and here it's just a cleaning game, right? Severo on the RE just cleans the fight up. Galio with the ultimate, that's way too late. Basically, WYGers thought that they had a free pick. Our nation thought otherwise.
Yeah, there's certainly not a free pick. It looked like it. It should have been, maybe, but that stasis, too strong, too powerful to keep Orianna alive. That's one of the most frustrating things when you're trying to like go on one person and they stay alive. A clean ace, 9 kills to 0. 0 turrets taken by WYGers to the 3 so far from Zero Zone, and now that they have the Baron buff, these towers are going to melt very, very quickly. Top tower already down. They'll focus next on mid tower, and look, the health bar's already half health. Lee nearly hit Corky, looking like he was going to go in. A little bit of flashy dash back out with that safeguard. But here, WYG, they're going to throw one last roll of the dice. Ari is taking an inhibitor at the same time on the bottom side. So all it was a little tease around the base. It wasn't quite enough to actually get a fight started. And that first inhibitor of the turret is down.
Wow, Zero Zone is just playing this perfectly. Wygers has no chance, and Garen just gets caught and dies. Wygers has no chance. They have no chance to win this game. Like,
it's gone from bad to worse from WYG. They haven't been able to put a single kill on the board. Not even the Nexus is going to secure a kill for them, as the stasis is enough to keep them at 12-0 for now. It is the Nexus falling, as Zero Zone are going to nearly perfect game WYGers in the first game of the Wild Rift EMEA Championships.
Yeah, wow, Zero Zone. I mean, I predicted them to win, but honestly, I didn't expect them to win this hard. And honestly, I feel like this team has potential. They did so incredibly well. They made the right calls every.
They did indeed make the right calls. I've lost you for a moment in my headset, Stuart, so we'll get you back in a moment. We're so excited here at game number 1 in the Wild Rift EMEA Championship. And I mean, yeah, I predicted WYGers to take that game, but it didn't look anywhere near as close as I would have liked it. Very rare you see on a kill-less game. It really kind of just started with these early plays, like the fight over Crab, which is earlier maybe than we kind of expect. But from here, like, I feel like Camille lost so much in the lane, and it's something that we can talk about as we get through this. But when Camille falls behind against Fiora, then you can't really take these fights in the side lane, can't really take any fights. And the disengage composition from Zero Zone actually kind of played out way more in their benefit than we expected. I mean, this right here is just a disaster of a fight for WYGers. When you think you've got it, you think you can come back into this game, and you go 5-0 or 0-5, as it would be for WYGers. So hopefully we can bring Hells back in and hear a little bit more about the setup for this and how maybe we can change things going into the second draft. But I mean, I feel like there was some weird things going on with this Garen mid that need to be sorted out. Graves doesn't quite have that strength in the early game by the looks of it to face against Lee Sin, and I think Zero Zone just kind of proving to be the better team in game 1 at least. Hard to argue with a 12-0 lead for the red side. Hells, are you back with me? I don't believe so. So we'll just continue as we watch the game close out. I mean, when you look at the picture that was kind of painted by WYGers, they left themselves 2 strong side lanes if they don't fall too far behind in the game. And they were the team that coming into today, I was like, well, WYGers aren't so great in the early game, so maybe they can get out of it. Zero Zone kind of going, all right, well, we'll just go full early game and get at least in and put our emphasis on the game and our impact. It's a hard position to be in. If your early game is what needs to be shored up, then I might have to draft a little bit more towards an early game. I might have liked to see them pick up the likes of Varus, that kind of pick early on. I think when we look at how the game played out, not really any surprises on the gold leads. A massive game in general. Hells is back, perfect. We're just looking at the gold leads for WYGers, well, I should say for Zero Zone. I was saying this Garen really didn't pay off the way they wanted it to. Ooh. Yeah, the Orianna actually had a decent amount of damage, even though, you know, we were saying, oh, she'll get more damage later in the game. It's still a massive amount of damage on that Orianna. The other side of things, WYGers really low damage, just because you don't have the items. Like you're basically getting pushed back and you're getting dropped constantly again and again. So we will shortly be taking a look at the play of the game. I have a feeling I know exactly which one it's going to be. I have a feeling it might be that ace, because not often that you see a clean 5-0 right before the Baron, but that's my guess. We'll have to see. But any changes you want to see in the draft for game number 2?
Yeah, I want to see some other bans. You know, I want to see the Camille getting banned. I want to see the Galio. You know, I want to see those types of champions focused. But the thing is, WYG was just not able to execute it. They were just not really able to execute that composition. They had a really solid composition. And although the Garen mid was perhaps a bit questionable, I still want to see those champions being a bit more focused in the draft.
Yeah, I think so too. Let's check out our play of the game, and you can walk us through a little bit more on how this one panned out.
All right, so we have the play of the game, and of course, it's the one where our nation escaped with the stasis enchant. You know, when he didn't die and got under the turret, we can see they're pushing Extreme to go under the turret, getting that free kill on the Camille right there, and then it's just cleaning crew, right? Our nation is still alive on the Orianna. He's able to provide the damage. A Fran on the Braum, that's just easy peasy fight for zero zone. They just did it really, really well right there. We can clearly see that they were the best team in this team fight.
I feel like there was a moment of miscommunication you can see there, where like Galio had his ultimate, uses it on the last member that's trying to stay alive, and then they run down into river away from the Galio. And like as a Galio player in that moment, you're like, no, stay near me, stay with me, I can protect you. And then it just died, you die, everybody dies, and you lose the game. But you know, I mean, what better way to start with a good showing from one of the teams that at least I knew a little bit less about coming into today from Zero Zone. That's the beauty of an open bracket, is there's so much information for all of the teams that it's hard to know everything coming into it. But we are going to keep our eyes on more of our games. We have game 2 coming up very shortly between WYG and Zero Zone. Stick with us. We'll be back in just a couple of minutes.
Breathe fire, your eyes so bright, the dark will guide us through the night. Bye, bye, my love, I'll shine for you in the dark. My tribe of stars. And I breathe fire. Your eyes so bright, the dark will guide us through the night. Bye bye, my love, I'll shine for you in the dark with my tribe of stars. My tribe of stars. My tribe of stars. My tribe of stars. My tribe of stars.
Welcome shit.
Everybody round, everybody round here, know we get hype. Everybody round, 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 everybody round here, know we get hype.
Welcome back to day one of the Wild Rift EMEA Championship. We're in the European Open Bracket top 16 playoffs. I mean, what a way to start the day with a good old-fashioned blasting 12-0 in the game. You were so rarely get to see games like this, and this is like day one, game one. Let's get it done with a really one-sided game. Hells, I mean, we're getting closer to game two. There will be just a couple of minutes before we get there, but we've already talked a little bit about the draft. I wonder at bot lane, like, we saw the core key presence in that first draft. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and we're first gonna head to Stuart to hear his thoughts, and then I'm gonna share you my thoughts.
Okay, we'll do it that way, right? What have you got for us, Stuart?
Thank you very much, Stress and Hells. Yeah, I was getting a little bit deeper into game number one whilst the other two were casting. Obviously, Zero Zone, absolutely flawless. They didn't lose a single tower. They didn't even die once during the entire game. And overall, it was just a great performance by Zero Zone. We have that sort of thing that Stress was talking about as well, about the red side flex picks. We saw Orianna being picked for the side of Zero Zone. And that's why the Garen maybe got picked in the mid lane. Maybe they thought, you know, the Orianna's going to go down to Dura lane. Maybe they're going to have that AD pick in the mid lane. But with that red side, they were able to flex the Orianna down to the Dragon lane and pick up Ori in the mid lane. And that kind of gets to my third point, where WYGers had no wave clear at all. They only really had Corki, which was really their main range damage source. They had, you know, a little bit of range from Graves. But other than that, they had nothing to clear the wave. So when they were trying to defend that mid lane tower and when they were trying to go for them early skirmishes, Ori was just able to push the mid wave against Garen and just able to roam around the map a lot quicker. And overall, a very, very solid performance by Zero Zone. Back to Stress and Hells to get us closer to game number two.
Oh, Stuart set you up perfectly to talk about wave clear and bot lane carries. You've mentioned the Corki there, Hells.
Yeah, the Corki, you know, I actually want to talk about a different champion, which is the Garen. They picked Garen mid lane, and it felt like Garen wasn't able to silence Zero Zone. Instead, he silenced my microphone. So that's definitely not a good pick to see from WYGers. So yeah, definitely hoping to see a proper mid laner from them in the next game, Stress.
I love it. I love it. Also, I mean, that's talking about mid lane, right? Garen is like... the wave play he has is he stands in the wave and spins around the display. It's like the least secure wave player possible in the game. So yeah, we'll see whether WYGers bring a little bit more wave player coming into game number two. There were some really easy options available for them. Like, we didn't even really talk about this, but there were other mid laners. I think Zed was up in this game,
yeah.
and a few others that, like, normally you just see that priority go right towards. You're like, okay, makes total sense. So yeah, weird draft for game number one. I want to see a different one for game number two for sure. Before we get to game number two, though, we do have a couple of minutes while the players are just getting ready, getting into the lobby. So we're going to head over with Stuart, who has special guests as part of an interview.
Thank you very much, Stress. I am joined by LK, the head coach for Team Queso. LK, hopefully you can hear me well. How you doing?
How you doing, Stuart? I'm doing very well.
Good stuff. Obviously, Team Queso, the winners of the Horizon of the Origin series last year. You're coming in as kind of the favorites, some would say. How is the team feeling going into your game tomorrow?
We're feeling great, to be honest. Every single day we feel that we are improving and that we're making some progress going into the goal, which is basically Barcelona again. We don't want to lower from what we did last year, and we're trying to make it work as much as possible, especially with the new members. Since we haven't been able to practice that much with the whole new team since we were deciding on who was better for us to fit the squad after the changes. So it will be a long ride, but we're in the correct way. So
Yeah, as you mentioned, the new members, Joey and Metha down in the duo lane and Veos in the mid lane. It's going to be really interesting to see them play, and hopefully you do really, really well. Obviously, for this series, Zero Zone against WYG, Zero Zone at the moment 1-0 up. Any predictions going into this series? You think Zero Zone's going to, take the 2-0, or do you think WYG will be able to come back?
I expected it to be a little bit more closer, obviously in favor to Zero Zone, according to they're from Spain, so we know their level quite a bit. But we expected a little bit to be a little bit more closer. I think Wygers is not playing proactively. I actually kind of like the draft anyways, because there was some holes in it, but I don't think it was that bad, to be honest, and they couldn't use the opportunities to actually make it work for them. So I don't know. Let's see in game 2. Maybe they come up and they make this series interesting anyways. So.
Yeah, fingers crossed WYG will be able to come up with a different and more interesting draft. LK, thank you very much for joining me with this interview. Back to Hells and Stress to get us into picks and bans for game number 2.
Thank you very much, Stuart. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Stuart, and thank you, Elka. I mean, this is why I love to hear from coaches, because this is day 1 of us coming in on the official season, and we're like, oh, this draft's kind of odd from what we've seen before. Clearly, this is something that's been run in scrims, and the coaches are like, hey, actually, it's not that unplayable. Like, it actually has these places where it can play. So that gives us an idea that if they see the same thing in game 2, then maybe it'll run a different way. But interesting to hear, about these changes to Team Queso. I know that you've got your eyes on Joey as a player, but we're going to head into picks and bans. Finally, I can stop yakking and we can get in on picks and bans. That's what everybody wants to see. So draft number 2 of the day. What changes are we going to have? It's now Zero Zone on the blue side, WYGers on the red. So that flip side's going to open up a few extra things.
Yeah, it's going to open up a few extra things. And this is 50% of the game already. And as you mentioned, the coaches, right? Like, they are the masterminds behind the teams, and they are often the ones that provide these drafts. And I personally, I don't know why, but I really, really love watching drafts. I really love it because it's like a game of chess. They're playing like a game of chess. Like, are you betting the set, or are you picking the Camille? What are we countering? There's just so many things going on in the draft right now where it's like you have to use your brain so hard. And in the first game, Zero Zone was definitely the one that came out on top. And honestly, I want to see a better draft from WYGers. We can see the obvious ban here, the Jays, but we can actually see a Fiora and a Lee Sin ban from Zero Zone.
Zero Zone are like, okay, we don't want you taking what we just had, so that's out of the way. Jason set out as well. They're red side bans that we're going to see a lot. So, I mean, that's the thing. Lee's one of these picks where if you're red side, you know that they're probably not going to be taking the first pick all the time. So you generally get that really strong jungler. Diana now as well. Was banned in the first game, taken away in the second.
Yeah, and we see the Diana ban again. And WYGers should see what's coming. Camille and Orianna. Why can you see that? There we see it. Obvious Camille ban. And the reason is that it's an obvious Camille ban. And, as a high elo player, you should always see that. It's because Lee Sin and Fiora got banned. Those are counters against Camille. If they get banned, you have to ban out the Camille, because Zero Zone would have definitely first picked the Camille in this draft. And right now, Orianna as well. That's another champion to have your eyes on. And again, they picked the Corki. It's not the best pick to pick against that Orianna stress.
Something's going on in scrims that I haven't seen so much of, because that's a Garen first pick as well, with Corki and then Galio on the opposite side. Corki Galio makes a little bit more, or at least the Galio makes a little bit more sense to me. Agree with you on the Orianna. Varus is available as well. Like, I would love to see the focus on these bottom lane to be a little bit earlier. At least that would have been on the WYGers side. There is that Zed. We talked about it being open in game 1.
Yeah, there's a Zed. It's a really, really solid pick, especially up against that Galio, because he can't really deal with the assassination from Zed. And as I said, I 100% expect an Orianna pick right now. And they actually don't. They go for the Olaf, and Olaf was banned out in the first game, and Olaf is quite a solid pick against that Galio as well. And Olaf is really good against that Galio engage. So basically, Zero Zone is saying, no, you're not going to go for the ultimate engage competition, because we have Zed, who has the shadows, we have Garen, who's not going to die, and we have Olaf with the ultimate, who becomes unstoppable.
Yeah, this is so much presence on the top side of the map for Zero Zone, basically taking the full top side already. On the side of WYGers now, we turn to the second ban phase, where Braum going to get banned for some of that disengage. They picked up the Darius for teamfight presence, and now Fizz is off the board as well from Zero Zone. That's a matchup that can play into Zed. It's a skill matchup. I was talking a little bit to Snitch about that one. So always, when you take the Zed, Fizz is one ban that you can always look at taking out. right now.
Yeah, definitely. And honestly, I feel like it's more of a personal ban. Like they might be afraid of a Fizz from Wygers because we don't see Fizz ban too often. And we see our Rakan ban coming through from Wygers, and that makes sense. You know, you don't want to have that Rakan up against you, denying you that ultimate engage with Rakan's ultimate because he's going to be charming around everyone. Yet again, Orianna is open, and I don't really know why Orianna hasn't been picked yet, because that would be the ultimate pick for Zero Zone to go through. That would be the damage per second that they need. And Kha'Zix, interesting. Very, very interesting.
Kha'Zix, so they want to take their jungler here so they can flex that core key between mid and bot. Now Morgana is up as well as a bot lane carry. Ziggs is up as a bot lane mage. Like, these picks are really strong mage picks. And it is going to be the Orianna, the Morgana taken for that wave clear for the bot lane. We talked about it coming into game 1. Got a buff recently in the last patch. So Morg taken as a bot lane carry.
Yeah, definitely bot lane carries, and I feel kind of bad for the AD carry players. You know, the actual ADC players, because you're not seeing the Kaisas, you're not seeing the Vaynes, not seeing the Jinxes, Ezreals. No, you're very likely not gonna see too much from them because it doesn't really fit the competitive meta right now. We talked about it earlier. You want to be pushing out that wave as fast as you can, so you kind of have to pick champions like the Corki, like the Morgana, like the Orianna, Ziggs, you know, because they are able to push out those waves super fast, Stress.
Yeah, they are. One champion not quite so good at that the later the game goes, or at least can't do it quite as successfully. Pantheon, yeah, that's another melee mid lane by the looks of it, where you're playing, I'm guessing, so Pantheon into Zed, I imagine the interaction is around Deathmark and the like invulnerability that Pantheon gets when he's doing his little spear thing. So kind of makes sense on that front, but like this is again a very short range composition from Wygers.
Yeah, they're going for the short range composition again, but honestly here it's not as bad as the first draft because true we have the Morgana, but Morgana doesn't quite have the damage per second that Orianna has. You know, in the late game, of course, she has insane damage, but it's not necessarily a lot of damage per second. Like, her second ability doesn't do as much damage as the balls from Orianna. And, yeah, so it's fine to draft like this from Wygers.
Yeah, well, we'll have to see whether they can actually, you know, hold that early game enough compared to game number 1, because I feel like they just got too far behind in the early game for that composition to ever come online. This time, as you said, it might be a little bit easier. I think they've got to watch out for that Morgana ultimate. The zone control that she provides with that is really tough to deal with. But this Kha'Zix in the jungle, going up against an Olaf, so am I right in thinking like Kha'Zix you expect to have a little bit more in the early game when it comes to damage, Olaf a little bit more in the later game?
Yeah, definitely. Olaf has very good late game presence, and we see the same thing coming through from Wygers, you know. It doesn't work. Zero Zone knows it, they're expecting it, they're not gonna fall for this. And a thing that I want to talk about, by the way, is Morgana. Morgana's ultimate, which deals damage equal to your max HP, which is such a good ultimate in the late game to deal with Wygers, because not only is it gonna shred through the tanks, the next thing that it does, which might be like a little secret tip, is it can reveal Kha'Zix. If you use your ult on Kha'Zix, your chain is going to be on him, and if he becomes invisible, you can still see where he is. So your chain will basically reveal where the Kha'Zix is, and it's just such a good pick for Zero Zone to pick that Morgana in this draft.
That's a really interesting point that I know, like, it's the same when you play Kai'Sa into Akali or any like invisibility champion and they get confused why they're revealed. I love those little interactions that do that. But nevertheless, this early game, we're seeing Garen run down Darius, and we need to keep in mind this is a first pick Garen as well. So, oh, that's first blood going over to Zero Zone. That's a bit of a disaster. Looks like it was double crowd control into Ignite.
Yeah, double crowd control to Ignite. The Thresh just destroyed Galio, and Pantheon mid lane, by the way, is really good into the Zed. I really like that draft, but let's take a look at the replay. What actually happened? They just got a catch, right? This is what their composition can do. Thresh hooked him, and then our nation used his root. Easy peasy kill. That's the early game thing that they can do, and they skill very well into the late game as well. But the early game is super dangerous with that catching out potential, because they were able to kill the support like that. Imagine what they can do with Zero on that Corki.
Yeah, exactly that. Like, imagine how much damage can come out. They now secure bot lane crab. Kha'Zix has secured topside crab for himself, so it at least is a trade there. We don't have that exchange over the crabs in this game, but I mean, that's one of the things that I think as we have more games to cast and we look at, I really want to look at how teams evolve around that level 2, because this happens all the time in solo queue. One side gets level 2 before the other in bot lane gets a kill, and it just snowballs the game so heavily, whereas like when you're paying attention to it, it shouldn't really happen. I know that sounds really harsh, but like you've got to watch for those level markers.
Yeah, definitely. Like they, as you said, they reached level 2 before. They had that full engage. Galio was still stuck on that level, and he really couldn't do anything. He couldn't use his second ability to survive. And I also want to talk about the composition of Wygers, because even though Corki deals 80% magic damage, it's pretty much a full attack damage composition, and they're up against a Garen stress.
Yeah, they're up against somebody who's like, okay, I can build a lot of armor, I can get some tankiness and deal a decent amount of damage as well. There's quite a lot of like execute potential as well on the side of Zero Zone. If you look at like the Garen ultimate, you've got Zed ultimate, like even Morgana, if I'm not mistaken, her pool, does it still do missing % health damage?
Yes.
The way that it does on PC?
Yeah.
Which again, when you've got low health targets, this composition is like, I'm just going to pick off everybody that's low health.
Yeah, definitely. And interestingly, Garen is going for a Black Cleaver. I personally would have loved to actually see some sort of a full armor composition. I mean, okay, that would probably not be the best thing, but that would be really fun to watch at least. Because how the hell would Wygers kill a Garen with full armor? Only the Corki would really be able to do that.
You're like, quick, go back to draft Ramos, like start again. Like, nevertheless, so yeah, we're reaching that really important point now. About 3 minutes 30, where our laners are going to start considering a recall for that first neutral objective fights. Big level points. Darius has his ultimate. He's already past level 5 up to level 6 now. Same with the Garen, same with the Olaf, same with the Zed. So like big team fight tools are available. And one I think we have to keep our eyes on is this Pantheon ultimate, because he'll cross the map very quickly. But look at how low health targets they are for now. In that top side, Darius was able to stay alive with the barrier for a little while longer, as Garen didn't throw out the ultimate either. And that was a top lane exchange that went in favor of Zero Zone for a moment. And we are back into the game for Rift Herald spawn. Ooh, we might get a fight over Rift Herald here. Look at how everyone's tracking on the minimap.
Yeah, Zero Zone is gonna take that fight. Like, you can tell. You know, they're not like Wygers. They're aggressive. This is an aggressive team. They see that they can win this fight. They're not even gonna give them the Rift Herald, right? Like, you could argue that they could have just taken the dragon and be like, fine, let's take the dragon and go back. But here you can see, this is what you're supposed to do with a composition that can win. This is what Wygers should have done in the first game, and there they are. Like, they're taking this fight, and they should have an advantage.
Yeah, here comes the Pantheon ultimate as he makes his entrance into the fight. There's a low health target on the side for Zed to pick off Corki. That's one of those carries early taken out already. Rift Herald down to 1100 health. It will be taken and stolen by Kha'Zix, but how will the fight go as the double executes just all around the place for Zero Zone? They pick up that Pantheon. They take 3 kills, losing one of their own, but they didn't get the Rift Herald. It was stolen by Wygers.
Yeah, Fallen did a great job focusing out that Rift Herald fight. You know, during the havoc of that team fight that it was, sure, they lost 3 members, but they were actually able to secure that Rift Herald, which is an incredibly important objective, which might set them up for this dragon as well. And now it's a very bad position for Zero Zone to be in, because Wygers has that Corki package, Zero picked it up, Kha'Zix has that Rift Herald, which he can drop if he wants to. Now they can go for the dragon as well.
Yeah, they're going to start that up as it looks like Zero Zone is just going to head towards the top side. They're going to try and get McKelly. As yeah, that's an easy pick off. Rift Herald's going to get dropped down. They can. It looks like they have already secured the dragon as we were in the replay, and it's easy take. So Dragon went over to Wygers. Rift Herald went over to Wygers. A kill in the top lane went over to Zero Zone, and they're working on that tower on the top side as well. Won't be first tower of the game though. We already just saw that one drop in mid lane.
And interestingly, Patterson leaves the tower. He doesn't secure it. Might have been because he was scared, because he doesn't have any vision on the red side jungle, but I would have argued that he should have taken that turret. It's a Garen, he can just escape. I want to mention though, Wygers is playing much better this game. Their macro game is much better, and even though they're still 2,000 gold behind, they're playing this game much better than the first game. They're rotating much better, they're playing more as a team, but Zero Zone, just absolute excellent team. They dropped the dragon, as we talked about. They cannot take that fight on the dragon because Corki had a package and Kha'Zix had a Rift Herald. They cannot take the fight, and they didn't. Simple as that. What did they do? They went to the top lane, they killed Extreme, and now they're pushing the top lane turret.
And I feel like that's something that Zero Zone have to be really careful around, is the ability for Wygers, though, to join in those fights. Like, last game, they had the Galio, and it was like, okay, one person can come into the fight with a global. Now you got 2. You got the Pantheon ultimate, you got the Galio ultimate. It's like, okay, we're in a 1v1. Oh no, now it's a 1 versus 3. So I think Zero Zone in those times where they're like trying to push turrets, that's the area to be careful around. And as long as they play carefully around that, it should be, you know, the way that Zero Zone have been playing out, you feel like it should still be in their control, right?
Yeah, it should still be in their control, especially because they have that Garen and the Olaf, right? These are champions that can escape from these types of engages, right? Like Pantheon goes in, Garen just uses his defensive second ability, Olaf uses his ultimate, and they can just very easily escape. So that is the power of the Zero Zone composition, and it's really denying the power of the Weiger's composition, because as you said, the Pantheon, sure, he can move on to many lanes. There's not that many targets that he can kill, because even the Zed, he cannot just kill. Because Zed might just counter kill you with that ultimate, with the death mark, right?
Well, Kha'Zix is here, Corki roaming up, Galio is in the back of the lane as well, and exactly this Zero Zone are like, okay, there's an opportunity here for us to get caught in top side, let's play safe around it, reset, let's maybe look at a bot side play instead. And you're just kind of pulling that Weiger's composition around the map, and this is, you know, pretty well composed is the way I'd put it. Like, Zero Zone aren't rushing into their engages, they're picking very smart engages and then avoiding them all of the times.
Yeah, definitely. And they don't have to, really, because if that Morgana gets to the late game, Garen, Olaf, you know, they have quite a solid late game composition. But you could argue that Weiger's also has quite a solid late game composition. The only problem is, though, Galio is quite behind. He doesn't have that much gold. Garen actually killing off the Pantheon in the bot lane, by the way, pushing the turret as well. Next Rift Herald is spawning. This is massive pressure on Weiger's right now.
Yeah, looks like he killed him under the tower as well. So this is now the gambit from Weiger's. Do they pick the engage around the Rift Herald and hope that they take it? Or do they kind of deal with the Garen? With a member missing, it's going to have to be Pantheon's choice when he comes back up. Garen's going to reset and look to get back out on the map for Rift Herald. Now, Pantheon will join quicker, but they haven't seen that Garen's recalled. And that is this moment where you have to pick and choose.
Yeah, and honestly, this is, again, a really hard team fight to take for Zero Zone. It's going to be really, really hard for them to engage, and it's just better for them to drop it. Because as you can see, the Corki package, and as you can see, they drop it and there's a fight.
Yeah, this fight shouldn't really happen now. The objective is gone, but that's massive damage coming down from Patterson to start this fight off. And Pantheon, however, has taken out Thresh's friend, is already down to respawn. And this is the problem, is you cannot afford to take a fight when the objective is gone against the team. The team fights better than you, but a killing spree for Patterson, and it is all on this first pick, Garen.
Yeah, that was not the fight that Zero Zone should have taken. It still went surprisingly well for them. They only dropped two of them only dropped. Of course, they did not get that Rift Herald, and now we can see another Dragon for Weigers. This should have indeed happened, but what should not have happened was that team fight. Because if the team fight didn't happen, and if you take a look at it again, the Corki package is just laying there, and as you can see, it's completely zoned out Patterson, R Nation, and Fran on the players of Zero Nation. So they just shouldn't have taken this fight, Stress.
Yeah, and the follow-up was maybe just a little too deep. I think at this point you're like, okay, Weigers, back yourself away. They're trying to get the kill on the Garen, and it's so close. It's like the tiniest of margins between that and the kill. That Dragon did go over to Weigers as we entered the replay. They did secure it, and a turret goes over in favor of Zero Zone in the top lane. So despite the fact that Weigers have had like a lot of the presence on neutral objectives, 2 Dragons, 2 Rift Heralds, the gold lead's still in favor of Zero Zone from these exchanges, from these fights, and just the amount of gold. Like, Garen is the one that is holding all of the lead right now with nearly 2,000 gold up on this Darius.
Yeah, he's holding up all the lead. Yeah,
fight him as they are closing in, but that won't be enough for a kill.
Yeah, you can't really fight a Darius like that, even though you're super ahead, because Darius wins against Garen in the longer run. Of course, Garen wins in the shorter one. So even though he's super ahead, even though Patterson is super ahead on that Garen, he knows that he shouldn't take that fight with the Garen, because there's really no reason to.
Yeah, you can see he's even trying to itemize a little bit towards the AD that you're talking about. He's got that Ramble Vest, pretty standard anyway, but will be cutting through the healing, at least, of Darius, and has a lot of armor alongside it. That's an engage onto our Nation, who's forced to stasis with the ultimate running though, and there is that Morgana ultimate. Zone control just blocks 3 members of Weigers from getting into it. Darius didn't get the execute off the ultimate, so that execution doesn't reset. He ends up dropping from it as well, and now they're chasing down Zero. Now they're chasing down the Corki. Galio is going to enter the fight, but look, there's no health. Here goes Pantheon as well. Everybody coming in from the sidelines is tagging in, and out of this one, Zed does manage to convert the kill onto Corki, and now it's round forced to get spun on by Garen, and Michele is going to drop as well. It's all Zero Zone. Just throw everything in the kitchen sink at them from Weigers, but they weren't enough to take the fight.
Yeah, and the whole squad from Weigers was there, but unfortunately the ones to actually celebrate the party was Zero Zone right there. As we look into the replay, Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful play by our nation. He used his ultimate, chained up the enemies, used the stasis enchant so he became invulnerable, and the stun still goes through, even though you're in stasis enchant, and then it's just a cleanup. They killed the important Kazakhs and the Darius very, very quickly, and again, like, that stasis saved the fight for them again. Our nation coming in clutch with the stasis and chance again, and I really want Stuart to listen, put that stasis as a key point, because that is what's winning them the game right there. Our nation just being the absolute MVP right there, you know? Like, it really all started right there. It all started right there, because Wygers nearly had that edge on the fight. As you can see, a lot of members from Zero Zone were very low, but it's really all because of that stasis play right there from our nation that they won the fight again.
Yeah, it turned into like one of those martial arts movies where the bad guys come in one at a time, and it's just like one against one. No, go in as five. You have this composition that team fights Wygers, and unfortunately, I feel like that's really reminiscent of that game one fight where they're like, we've got to pick, and then it goes badly because they don't actually take out our nation. Like 2 games in a row, our nation's stasis, as you've already mentioned, is really breaking Wygers' ability to team fight, and that's got to be frustrating. A 3rd item completed as Morgana does pick up the Rylai's. So now you add some extra tankiness, you add some extra slows onto the damage. Wygers really need to find an individual pick. Zero Zone just are not giving them the opportunity.
Yeah, they're indeed not giving them the opportunity, and especially with this build, with the 3 items as you mentioned on our nation, it's going to be incredibly hard for Wygers to deal with. And right now, even if Corky gets a package, Zero Zone can just take this fight. They can very easily take this team fight, and of course they're going to do that.
Oh, Dark Binding is going to land. Graves, Garen, I should say, dodges out the taunt. Doesn't quite get the kill off the ult, but it's enough to take the kill as Thresh was, well, Galio was running back out of this one. They're going to flay back on to Extreme, and here comes Pantheon, but is it going to be enough to turn this one around? There's some damage, but it's surely not enough, as here comes Morgana with the chains landing, walking the dogs all the way back to the base, as that is another clean ace in favor of Zero Zone.
Yeah, very, very clean ace. They didn't even have to waste most of their summoner spells. This was just a very easy ace, and right now it's looking like the game is just over. The Zero Zone has an incredibly powerful late game composition, and if we look into that replay as well, there's just really nothing that Wygers could have done. You know, they tried to go in with the full engage, but the Morgana ultimate and the Olaf ultimate is just way too strong. They can just absolutely run down Wygers, which they did. Zed finishing off the backline as well. Like, Zero Zone is just playing this super well, Stress.
Really well, and we heard from Elka, the coach of Team Queso, before this game, thinking that it should have been a closer game. And you know what? This one actually did start closer. Like, it's 17 kills to 4 now, but it actually felt like those first few fights and objectives, Wygers were competing with Zero Zone, but now this game is just a complete runaway. 4,000 gold lead nearly in the top lane or the Baron lane, 3,000 from mid lane, 2,000 from Dragon lane carries as well, even 1,500 gold lead on the supports at this point. That's how far ahead Zero Zone are, and with this Baron buff, they're going to be able to deny a lot of the ability for Wygers to de-push, but it's 3 versus 5 in the middle lane, as Pantheon is going to find the way on to our nation. Stasis once again is going to ruin Pantheon's day and get our nation out of this one. That's the kill onto Darius. No more teamfight resets on this game, as Zero Zone are just cleaning everything off the rift here. It's only Fowlin and Zero that survive, and with the Baron minions going to come through from Zero Zone, this surely has to be it.
Wow, unbelievable. I say it again, but our nation, what are you doing? Have some mercy on Wygers. The stasis enchant plus the ultimate again. Wygers can just not do anything against it. Yet again, they just can't. They cannot do anything against this stress.
Yeah, this is insane when you look at, like, so much of the team fight is around that initial few seconds and getting a pick, and Stasis just shuts it down completely. 2 lanes of super minions are going to be pushing in now as the rest of the Baron buff comes through. Patterson going to go under the Nexus, but that Nexus does bite, and the low health bars would be enough for Wygers to pick off and turn back around, but legendary goes Patterson as Fowlin runs afoul of this Garen. Zero Zone come back away, set up for this Dragon, and look to take the game.
Oh god, man, this is just an absolute abomination. So the early game, Wygers did a really good job, and I want to give them massive credits for that. You know, they did a great job playing this game, but late game we can just see the team that's better, which is obviously Zero Zone right there. You know, the macro games, they've constantly been pushing out lanes, they know how to fight, they know how to execute their composition, they buy the right items, right enchantments, everything, it just stacks on top of each other, which allows Zero Zone to just seemingly very easily win this game, Stress.
Yeah, it seems like it. Hells, do you wanna see if I can curse in action here? Because I'm about to say I think Patterson and our nation are gonna end this series with 0 deaths between them.
Oh, wow.
So we'll see how much power we have on day one of this broadcast, because that would be an impressive feat across 2 games of Wild Rift to go unkilled. But nevertheless, I mean, Dragon's already gone down. I don't even think we're going to see Elder Dragon at this point, but if we do, it will be a Cloud. I think Zero Zone, if they just find one catch on this bot lane while the top supers are pushing in, it's going to be really, really hard for Wygers to actually take the fight. And that's what Zero Zone are doing. They're like, okay, bot lane, it's the only place we can be. Let's set up Vision in jungle, push on that tower.
Yeah, and really the only way for Wygers to win the fight right now would be the Darius. And we can see he's 0-4. And the problem is the Morgana stasis just doesn't allow the Darius to use his ultimate. He cannot use it on the Morgana. And then the only ones left are either super tanky targets or the Zed. And Zed is also quite an annoying target to follow. So it's just not the composition to play with Darius. It's really hard to get that ultimate reset.
Yeah, oh, there's a Dark Binding onto Galio. It's going to be enough to at least force some tools to be used as Galio and Pantheon. It's one last roll of the dice here. And they're trying to get this team fight to work, but Darius has already fallen, and the rest of Zero Zone are going to fall in line as well. Wygers are going to get taken out of this one. All 5 members still alive on Zero Zone. They're going to say, screw the Baron. We're going to take the series 2-0. And that is a very impressive performance from Zero Zone.
Very, very impressive. Like, really, really impressive. Not just impressive, very impressive. Look at the Garen, by the way.
How many tower shots is he going to take?
He's just
That's
chilling.
insane. Zero Zone close out our first series of the Wild Rift EMEA Championships. 2-0, looking very impressive while they do it. Wow, Patterson tanked up so much at the end. It's kind of insane. Really, really impressive game from Patterson and the rest of Zero Zone. I mean, how do you deal with that? That was like the first pick Garen that we expected, but like I didn't really expect it to be that strong.
Yeah, honestly, Wygers was just not really able to deal with it. Their draft didn't really counter it too well. You know, they had the full attack damage composition, sure, with the Corki having a little bit of ability power, but they were just not able to deal with its stress.
Yeah, they weren't able to deal with basically anything in that game, it felt, which, I mean, it feels bad for Wygers to come in game 1 and go, okay, we got a game with no kills. Let's just do better in game 2. And I thought we saw a better draft and we saw better execution in the early game for sure, but definitely the macro game played out. I mean, these Rift Herald fights, like we saw Wygers taking the Rift Herald, taking the Dragon early on. They even got the steal from the Kha'Zix. So like it looked like the platform that they could build off. But I mean, I feel like our nation's stasis button deserves the MVP in this series. Like the entire series long, it was just all about our nation.
Yeah, it was all about our nation. The stasis and chants were just way too much. Like, why? It felt so toxic. It just felt unfair. It felt unfair. It felt so unfair that he could just click on a button and yeah, stasis and chant, become golden, untargetable. Your ultimate still goes through, and you destroy everyone. And honestly, that has been the MVP of this game, indeed.
Yeah, I wish we could just award that the MVP. Because that's it. Stasis
and chat.
Shout outs to Patterson. I mean, as we see more of teams like Zero Zone and Wygers, we're obviously going to have more time to focus on some of the players perhaps that don't pop up in our first games. But I think like in these initial games, the Wild Rift EMEA Championship, like this is the opportunity for players like Patterson to go, hey, I'm here and I'm a really good Baron laner. And he won both matchups, sometimes like even in like 1v2 situations. So I feel like he's really impressive and a player that I didn't have my eyes on yet, but certainly now I'm like, all right, Patterson, you're popping off on these 2 carries, and when you're given a pick like that first pick, you show you can make it work.
Yeah, and that's what we talked about earlier on. You know, we just hadn't seen too much from these teams yet, but now we know that our eyes are going to have to be on Patterson and our nation, especially. You know, they were all good. You know, Lubunya, Safiro, and Friend, they all did amazing, but I feel like the eyes have to be on our nation and Patterson. They were the ones. They haven't died. As we said, they didn't even die. They were just absolutely hard carrying these games.
Yeah, we'll see whether that streak continues any further. Like, it's so hard not to die in Wild Rift. For perhaps those of you that don't play, you know, a lot of ranked or a lot of competitive, like not dying against good players is really difficult. So to do it in 2 games, especially playing like a frontline tank like a Garen, like very, very impressive from the Baron laner. And I mean, we've seen a little bit of this meta pan out. My favorite thing now is to see where the second and third and fourth series of the weekend take us, because I don't know that we're going to see as much priority on this Corki. Like, that to me felt like strangely high priority in the draft for what we've seen in previous tournaments.
And yeah, we could see that the priority lied on Corki because of the package. We could clearly see Wygers, they were playing around the package, but Zerozone was like, we're not even going to deal with it, right? They gave away the first two dragons. They were like, yeah, we're not going to deal with it. Why would we? You have the Corki package. So they didn't deal with it. And they got to the late game. They got the other objectives on the other side of the map. And sure, they came out on top. So they knew how to counter that Corki.
Yeah, they really did. And you know, Corki, you mentioned it, that package around team fights, around neutral objectives is really important. But in this game, like, there were times where the Corki, like, Wygers didn't get the recall off beforehand. So you go into a Rift Herald fight, and luckily Kha'Zix gets the steal, luckily you get it. But if you don't have that before the fight, then you're just waiting around for a few minutes. You're like, well, I guess I'm just not going to pick up the package. So I want to see a little bit more priority towards the likes of the Varus that we've seen in previous tournaments. We haven't seen a lot of like Renekton either, which has been a big pick around the world. But I think the important thing for us is to talk to one of the players from the game. It's the Stasis King himself.
Yeah.
That's the new nickname. Let's go over to Stuart with Our Nation.
Thank you very much, Stress. I'm here joined by the Status King himself. We've given you a new nickname now, Our Nation. So thank you very much for joining me for this interview. Congratulations. How are you and the team feeling after that series?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm the AP mage. I'm the AP King mage right now, like this meta. But yeah, the feelings are really good. We came to this game knowing that we will win. We will win 100%. So the feeling of the team it's awesome right now.
Awesome stuff. But yeah, as you said, you know, the AP mages down in the duo lane. You don't really see a lot of AD carries at the moment. Does his meta suit you? Do you like playing the AP mages down the duo lane?
I mean, at least it's something different because I'm playing AD carries for like 7 years. So at least it's something different for me. But yeah, I truly prefer the ADCs. But it's fine. It's fun. It's fun.
Yeah, so what you have to deal with as a competitive player. Now, going into the next series, obviously Viv Esports against Principality, you'll be playing the winner of this series. Any predictions, any early thoughts, you know, maybe a team that you might want to avoid maybe, or thoughts coming into the series?
Nah, because we really have to win everyone if we want to go for Barcelona. So it's like, we probably know that Viv is gonna win because they have a good roster. But we know all of them are like solo queue players. We don't disrespect them, for sure. But we know as a team, we are 100% better. Like, there is no point. There is no point for them. But we will see what happens. I think it's a really close match, honestly. But I think we will win for sure.
Awesome stuff. Our Nation, congratulations again. Good luck in the next round of the tournament. Hopefully we'll see some more statuses and some more AP mages from yourself. Yeah. But we're going to go back to Stress and Hells to wrap up the first series of the day. Thank you again.
Okay, let's go tier list.
Oh, it was only a matter of time before Stuart got memed. This is the problem. You put yourself out with like these tier lists, you and Scoundrel doing them, and then players are gonna let you have it. I can't remember where you put Our Nation, but you better move him up at least one spot after that performance, because that was good. I mean, you heard him say like he actually prefers AD carries. Like, I would never know that's his lesser preferred play style of these majors. Looking at those two games.
Yeah, and now I can understand why he was able to play like that. The confidence that was just through the roof, right? And it was not like anything annoying or bad. He was just confident. He knows his skills. He knows that he can just destroy the enemy, and it showed in the performance, as we can see right there. You know, Our Nation and Patterson just absolute dominant performance. They were like on another league. And seeing them be like, yeah, we can beat Viv Esports as well. It's great to see, and it makes me very excited to see that series especially. And man, Zerozone, very underrated team. This might be the dark horse that we were looking for, Stress.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm really impressed, and I think, as you said, like, not in a disrespectful way, being confident. He said, like, we don't disrespect Viv, but we think that we're the better team. I think that's a really strong statement that I'm so interested in seeing more on, because, like, I casted the lineup for Viv a couple of weeks back in January, and they look pretty strong in their own minds. So. Maybe not as strong as Zero Zone in these two series, but we have so many more games. We have so much more to see in the Wild Rift EMEA Championships. We're going to take a look at our player of the game. It's going to be between one of two people, and I would drum roll, but I don't want to deafen everybody with headphones on from this one. Player of the series. Oh, sorry, player of the game at this point. Well, I mean, this one is that top lane play.
Yeah, definitely. This was the Rift Herald fight that happened afterwards. So we can see that this was not quite the best engage from Zero Zone. This was the moment for WYGers to win the fight. And honestly, Zero Zone came out of this pretty lucky. We can see Patterson getting to 1 HP and still being able to use his ultimate. But this was really the only fight, the only fight that went WYGers' way, really.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like it should have gone even more their way, right? It's like you get 2 kills on the Pantheon, you get the objective, you're like, okay, now we stop and we slow down and we either reset or take a tower. At least that's my preferred way of seeing teams play. I know the viewers love bloodthirsty teams. Love with those overextensions as well. Now it's time to discover who our MVP of this series is going to be. I think it's got to be either our nation or Patterson. Is it going to be the stasis button? That's what we need to find out on this exchange. As it is going to be Patterson. I think that's fair. 28 KDA. That Garen damage was ridiculous as well.
Yeah, Patterson, the player that we didn't talk as much about as our nation, but he was just the front line that also dealt the most damage in the game. That's a funny thing, because he is the Garen, right? He's going for full tank Garen. But we saw the damage graph early. He dealt the most damage in the game, and that's what makes him the MVP in the game. Even though our nation was able to do these crazy plays as well, Stress.
I think that's also when you look at like the function in the team, for me, always plays into being an MVP. Like playing a mage carry is a difficult task in itself, but like when you're playing Baron lane, you a lot of the time on your own. You're basically up there solo. You have to be careful of the jungler a lot more. You don't have that support around you. So I think when you look at like Patterson going unkilled as a frontline tank, doing a bunch of damage, like picking these fights and getting away with it, it's no surprise to see why he's the MVP. And I want to see a little bit more presence, because I didn't think Garen was the first pick worthy champion coming into today, and now I'm like, well, maybe for Patterson it is. We're gonna have to find out in our second series today whether that holds true, as we are headed to a short break. Just a couple of minutes, we'll be back with our second series of the day for the Wild Rift EMEA Championship.